Have you ever sat alone in a quiet house staring into space and wondered, why doesn't my child call anymore? It's not that you expect anything grand. It's just that you once gave them everything. And now, the laughter that once echoed through these walls has become a memory. Each year, their footsteps seem to grow more distant, leaving behind a quiet emptiness you can't quite name. Is it neglect? Or is it a lesson unfolding in silence? Buddha taught that children are not possessions. They are karmic streams passing through our lives. They don't come to fulfill our dreams. They come to reveal the parts of us we have yet to face. So maybe their silence isn't punishment. Maybe it's a mirror, a very honest one, and one that asks for the courage to truly look. And if you're willing to look deeply into that mirror, the healing may begin right where you're sitting now. 1. We don't just pass down our genes. Have you ever asked yourself, what have I truly passed on to my child? Not the house, not the savings account, not just the same eyes, the curly hair, or that familiar way of walking. What we pass on more deeply, more silently, and with far more impact is our energy, our fears, our unexamined beliefs, our wounds that never had the chance to heal. Many believe parenting is about providing, giving education, guidance, stability, and once the child grows up, our job is done. But Buddhism offers another view. Karma doesn't just flow through our actions, it flows through our consciousness. Whatever remains unresolved in the hearts of parents continues in the lives of their children, not through what we say, but through who we are. Love that's laced with worry is no longer pure love. It becomes an invisible thread of control, exhausting both parent and child. The Buddha once said, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." And this is just as true for our consciousness. We don't truly own our wounds, and if we don't transform them, we quietly pass them on. Many parents think providing food, education, and safety is enough, and yet some children raised in comfortable homes still grow up feeling unseen, unheard, unsafe. Why? Because the parents were always busy, or anxious, or living under the weight of a silent fear they couldn't name. A father who never hugs his child often carries the pain of never being hugged by his own father. A mother who lashes out in anger may be protecting a sorrow she's carried since childhood. They become parents and think they've left the past behind, but the past doesn't disappear. It simply finds a new way to return through the next generation. Sometimes your child's silence is not betrayal. It's a bell of awakening, a gentle invitation to ask, how did I live when they were growing up? Was I truly present or just physically nearby, lost in worry, stress, or pressure? There's a powerful image in meditation. A lake can only reflect the sky when it becomes still. And in our relationship with our children, the same is true. When our minds are stirred by anxiety, fear, or expectation, we can't truly see our child. We only see the version of them we've imagined. And often, the silent child doesn't stay quiet because they have nothing to say. but because they feel too much and don't know where to begin. So, if you're a parent and you feel your child drifting away, don't rush to blame yourself, and don't rush to blame them. Instead, sit with yourself and ask gently, am I still carrying something from my own past? Am I repeating a kind of buff I once resented receiving? Then, what in me is still longing to be healed? The Buddha said, the mind is the root of all things. The mind leads all things. When your mind shifts, the energy you radiate shifts too. And often, that's enough to open a path. Not through pressure, not through reasoning, but through your mindful presence. You can't go back and be a better parent in the past, but you can begin today to heal that past with the wisdom and awareness of this moment. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who are humble enough to reflect, compassionate enough to release control, and brave enough to love, without chaining that love to expectations. If your child is silent right now, see it as a lesson not from a book, but from life itself. A lesson in karma, in love, and in the journey back to yourself. And perhaps, from that inner return, the bond between you and your child may begin to blossom again, not through guilt, not through obligation, but through a new kind of connection, one that feels freer, softer, and more at peace. 2. True love doesn't bargain. You know, there's something many of us, young or old, fall into without realizing. We confuse love with being loved back. You give your care. You pour time, effort, even your youth into someone's life. And then one quiet moment, your heart sinks because nothing comes back. Not a thank you. Not a thoughtful gesture. Not even just being there. And you start wondering, did I love the wrong way? Or were they just too indifferent? But maybe the real question is deeper. Was I truly loving them? Or was I trading affection, dressed up as love? According to the Buddha, real love is free from attachment and free from conditions. He didn't teach love as a transaction. He taught love as an extension of compassion, like a person planting seeds without expecting a harvest. The world teaches, I love you if you love me. But the Dharma teaches I love you even if you cannot love me back, because this love isn't for holding. It's for offering. True love is like your breath. Do you need anyone to thank you for breathing? Have you ever said, I'll only breathe if life treats me kindly? No. You just breathe, quietly, naturally. No one sees it. No one rewards it. But it keeps you alive. That's how real love works. It doesn't need to be wrapped in vows or proved with gifts or praise. It doesn't need to be loud to be real. It just needs to be lived like a stream flowing through both sunshine and storms. But to love like that, you must learn to let go. Let go of needing to be understood. Let go of needing to be appreciated. Let go of needing anything in return. And that is the hardest part, because ever since we were little, love came with conditions. If you're good, Mom will love you. If you achieve, Dad will be proud. If you behave, you deserve affection. Love in your heart became a reward, not a presence. So you grew up and started loving others the same way. You waited for the right person, the right moment, the right response, before opening your heart. You gave, but inside you were counting. Did they notice? Did they return the care? Did they meet my hopes? And you got tired, you got hurt. But love didn't hurt you. It was the expectations wearing the mask of love that brought the pain. When you love with the quiet condition, I'll feel at peace. If they love me back, then your love has become dependence. Breath doesn't ask whether you're rich or poor, successful or broken. It just flows because you're alive. And love in its purest form is the same. It's not here to be praised. It's here because you've grown enough to realize love needs no reason. And when you stop demanding, you finally begin to love. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught hatred does not cease by hatred. Only by love does hatred cease. This is an eternal truth. You can't heal a heart wounded by expectations. With more expectations, you can only heal it by returning to the kind of love that asks for nothing except your own inner peace. Imagine this. One day, you love someone even if they can't love you back. You care for your child even if they never say thank you. You send a silent blessing, a quiet prayer, and wait for nothing. That's not weakness. That's strength beyond words. Because that's how a free person loves. Not everyone reaches that place. But the moment you begin to see that love is not a deal, it's a cultivated state of being, you begin to walk a very different path. A path where love no longer hurts. A path where peace begins. In meditation, we practice loving kindness with the breath. Breathing in, I send love to myself. Breathing out, I send love to the one who hurt me. You don't have to say it aloud. You don't have to send a message. Just breathe in and out with a heart that is let go. And in that breath, you're sending out a healing energy that others can feel, no matter how far they are, even if they never come back. Is it painful to love like that? Yes. But it's a pure kind of pain, like light passing through a narrow doorway. And after that comes freedom. 3. Every time your child is absent is a chance to return to yourself. You know, not every child who pulls away is reacting to something you did wrong. Not every distance between parent and child is the direct result of a mistake. Sometimes that distance comes simply as a part of life, like autumn following summer. Like leaves falling, not because the tree hates them, but because it's just the natural rhythm of things. There are parents who have lived with great kindness, no violence, no coldness, no resentment, just quiet love, steady presence, and a deep care that watches over every step. And yet one day, the child grows. They get busy, grow distant, or quietly disappear from your daily life, like an invisible thread slowly loosening. And you can't even tell when it began. You don't understand why. There was no argument, no blame, just silence, growing longer. And in that silence, it's easy to spiral into self-blame. What did I do wrong? Was I not good enough? Does my child not need me anymore? But my dear friend, pause. Take a deep breath. Because sometimes this distance has nothing to do with your faults. It's part of your child's own path, part of something they don't yet understand within themselves, part of an inner storm they're quietly facing, one you may never see. The Buddha once taught each being carries their own karma. No one can walk the entire path for another. Even between parents and children who share blood, a roof meal's years of memories, there are still two different karmic streams, two different awakenings. Just because you're the parent doesn't mean you're entitled to know everything in their heart. Just because you've given everything doesn't mean they'll understand right now. And maybe the most important thing you can do in their absence is not to find an answer, but to come back to yourself. Have you noticed that each time your child becomes distant, each time you sit quietly with that aching emptiness in your heart, something begins to stir inside you? You start to reflect. You start to truly feel the weight of presence. You begin to ask yourself, have I ever truly listened to my child? Or did I only believe I was listening? Was my love a space for them to be themselves? Or was it wrapped in quiet expectations? Their absence, if you look closely, may not be a loss. It might be an invitation, a wake-up call, a doorway to inner stillness. In Buddhist meditation, there is a practice called quietly observing emotions. You don't fix anything. You don't chase the feeling away. You just sit with it and gently ask, where is this emotion coming from? So when your child no longer calls like they used to, instead of rushing to blame them or blaming yourself, try sitting with yourself. Let the sadness be there like a guest. Let your heart be touched, not to accuse anyone, but to heal. The Buddha once said, be a light unto yourself. And maybe that light doesn't come from someone returning to love you, but from the quiet courage of facing your loneliness and not running from it. I know it's not easy. Being a parent comes with so many unspoken hopes. You've given so much. And somewhere deep inside, you probably wish, though you never said it out loud, that one day they'll come back. They'll see what you gave. They'll be grateful. But I wonder, can you love without needing proof? Can you love without needing it returned? Can you love simply because you are someone whose heart still knows how to love? If you can, then you are beginning to touch a deeper form of compassion, a love that doesn't depend on someone's presence, a love that doesn't shatter when forgotten, a love that becomes a safe home for yourself. And in that space, whether your child ever returns or not, you won't fall into that dark hole of pain because you've learned how to return home, back to your breath, back to your own presence, back to the kindness, not just for them, but for yourself. Don't let your child's absence become a story of long resentment. Let it become a sacred space, a quiet moment to return and meet yourself again more honestly than ever before. 4. Am I waiting out of love or waiting to be acknowledged? Have you ever found yourself staring at your phone quietly, as if the glow of the screen might signal a message from the one person you miss the most? Just a simple call, a short line, I miss you, Mom. And when it doesn't come, your heart sinks a little. No one has said anything unkind. No one hurt you directly. But somehow, the silence itself hurts. I'm not here to tell you not to feel sad. I'm here to invite you to sit with that sadness and ask yourself one very gentle question. Am I waiting because I love or because I need to feel seen? It's not an easy question. It touches something deep inside every parent. a place often left unattended in the busy years of raising a child. You've given so much. You've sacrificed. You've been patient. You've watched them grow step by step. And now, in the quiet of your home, you long for a response. Not because you're demanding anything, but because you once believed that true love is always returned. But in Buddhist teachings, we learn love does not demand. It simply shines like sunlight. So why does it hurt when there's no thank you, no call, no presence? Maybe because the love you gave came with a very human hope. One day my child will see everything I've done. One day they'll come back and say what I've been waiting so long to hear. And you're not wrong for feeling that way. It's a very real need from a heart that has loved so much and so rarely felt love back in the same way. But I invite you to look a little deeper. Are you really waiting for your child? Or are you waiting for anyone to affirm that you've lived with kindness, that you mattered, that you were enough? Your child's silence isn't necessarily rejection, but your pain may be pointing to a wound within you that's still waiting to be seen. Maybe there's a part of you since childhood that longed to be acknowledged, that wanted your parents to notice, that needed someone to say you did well. You deserve love. And now you look at your child like a mirror. You're not just waiting for them to call. You're waiting for the feeling that you were good enough. But do you really need that? Do you truly need someone else to confirm what you've already lived with your whole heart? Buddha said, take refuge in yourself. Look inward. See clearly. Recognize your own heart. Because if your peace depends on someone else's approval, even someone you love dearly, then your happiness will always be fragile. And here's the truth. Sometimes children don't know what to say. Not because they're ungrateful, but because they simply haven't yet understood your heart. They haven't matured enough to name your silent sacrifices. Or maybe they're too overwhelmed with their own life, their own pressure, their own fear to even see your quiet longing. In those moments, ask yourself again, am I hurting because of a missed call? Or because a part of me still needs to be seen? If it's the second, then you're standing at the doorway of a powerful opportunity. An opportunity to return to yourself and finally acknowledge your own heart. Not with words, but by sitting still, breathing deeply, and whispering to yourself, I've loved my child with everything I had. I wasn't perfect, but I was real. I no longer need to be seen because I've seen myself. You might wonder, but what if they never say thank you? Will I be strong enough not to fall apart? I believe you will be, because love doesn't need applause to be true. It becomes most powerful when it asks for nothing in return. Like an old tree standing through the winter, even when no one comes to admire its bloom. Yes, you may still long for your child to call. That's human, that's real. But if you can loosen the expectation from your love, you'll finally start to breathe again, without the weight on your heart. You'll love not to be acknowledged, but because you've learned to accept yourself. And that is the path to freedom and love. And sometimes from that very place of not waiting a phone call may come. Not because you asked for it, but because love, now free of pressure, has created a wide open space. A space where your child can walk back in without fear. 5. Parenthood is a spiritual path, and your child is your teacher parenthood. It sounds like a role, something you take on, something you fulfill. But if you look deeper, you'll see it's more than a role. It's a path, a lifelong spiritual practice, one that doesn't come from books or temples, but from everyday life, raw, real, and deeply personal. In Buddhism, there are many known paths of cultivation: meditation, chanting generosity, moral discipline. But there's one path that often goes unrecognized, the path of being a parent. Not because it's easy, but because it demands everything: compassion, patience, letting go, humility, not in theory, but in every moment of living, in the small, mundane, painful, beautiful moments that make up family life. Have you noticed? No meditation retreat will confront your ego like the moment your child screams, "I hate you." No spiritual practice will break your heart like silently watching your child grow distant, realizing they no longer need you. And no teacher, not even the kindest or the sternest, will push you to grow like the very child you once held in your arms, now taller than you, pulling away. Have you ever thought of your child as a silent teacher? They teach sacrifice in the nights you can't sleep. They teach limits when you realize you can't protect them forever. They teach letting go when you have to watch them walk away even though your heart isn't ready. And sometimes their silence, their coldness, or their absence, that is the deepest teaching of all, the one you never asked for, but must learn anyway. The Buddha once said, "In life, nothing is random. Every person who comes to you is karmically connected. No one enters your life by accident. And your child, more than anyone, is the most profound karmic bond you'll ever know." You didn't just give your child a body. They gave you the opportunity to walk the path through love. A love that demands nothing in return. A love that goes beyond identity. I am the parent. You are the child. You should do this or be that. You may believe I'm here to guide, to raise, to pass down wisdom, but then one day you'll sit speechless, unable to understand the way they speak to you, unable to enter their world anymore. And in that silence, if you have mindfulness, you'll realize I wasn't sent here to control this child. I was sent here to learn how to love without owning, to learn selflessness through the fragile form called my child. Parenthood is a very unique spiritual path. There's no break, no formal class, no certificate that says you passed, but every single day, life gives you the invitation to return to your heart. When your child misbehaves, you practice patience. When they turn cold, you learn to release expectation. When they're hurting, you learn to listen without judgment. And when they walk away, you bless them without clinging. Someone once asked me, "How do I know if I'm parenting the right way?" I smiled. Because there is no fixed right. There is only the maturity of your heart. Do you still feel anger when your child is ungrateful? Do you still cling to the image of yourself as the sacrificial parent? Do you still fear being forgotten? Or have you become whole enough to love without needing to be needed? At some point, you will begin to understand. Every child, whether near or far, is a mirror. Some children open your heart, Some children teach you to let go. Some reflect the wounds you've never healed. And some, even if they never return, give you the reason to turn inward. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said, "The wise one is not the one who knows much, but the one who knows themselves." Parenthood is a path to knowing yourself through the being you gave life to. There is no spiritual path more sacred than ordinary life, and there is no awakening deeper than unconditional love. You are practicing even when you don't realize it. You are learning every time your child hurts you, and you choose awareness instead of reaction. You are growing every time you realize, I don't need to be a perfect parent. I just need to be present with a heart that knows how to love and how to let go. And one day you will smile even if your child never calls, never visits, because you will have learned the greatest lesson of all. I walked the full path of parenthood as a spiritual journey, not so that my child would understand me, but so that I could understand myself through them. 6. Some wounds don't heal on their own. There's something you and I have both heard before. Time heals all wounds, but is that really true? Have you ever waited for pain to fade with time, waited for a loss to hurt less, waited for silence between you and someone you love to soften, just because the days kept passing? And then, one day, you realize some wounds don't heal on their own. They don't scream, they don't bleed, but they sit there quietly beneath every conversation, behind every laugh, under every moment when you thought you had moved on. It can take just one word, a smell, a name mentioned in passing, and suddenly the ache returns, as if no time has passed at all. Why? Because the wound was never truly seen, never truly touched with presence, never once held with compassion by you for you. You see, most of us are better at enduring than at facing, better at turning away than sitting still, better at staying busy than slowing down. You've been hurt before, and maybe you told yourself, it's fine, I'm okay. But maybe you didn't let go because you forgave. Maybe you let go because you were just too exhausted to carry it anymore. The Buddha said, truth cannot be hidden for long. It will always find a way to return, and so will your pain. You can bury it beneath work responsibility, even kindness for others, but it lingers. It waits, not to punish you, but to be seen. And when you finally slow down, it knocks. In that moment, you have two choices: to turn away again, or to sit down and truly listen. Can you look at the sadness you've been avoiding? Can you place your hand over the wound, not to dig deeper, but to finally touch it? With a softness you've never allowed, I won't lie. This isn't easy. No one teaches us how to sit with pain. We're taught how to get over it, how to be strong, how to move on. But few ever tell you this. There are things you cannot outrun by moving faster, only by sitting deeper. And only when you sit deeply with yourself in mindfulness and breath, in quiet surrender, can you begin to hear what the wound has been trying to say. It doesn't need you to fix anything. It doesn't need you to explain. It doesn't need someone to blame. It just wants your presence, your compassion. The way a mother holds her crying child, not to stop the tears, but simply to be there. I once told a father, "Your son doesn't need you to apologize, but you need to apologize to yourself for holding pain too long and not giving yourself permission to heal." Because sometimes the real wound doesn't come from what others did to us. It comes from how we treated ourselves afterward. You went silent. You stayed strong. You told yourself, "I just have to keep going." But somewhere inside, there was a part of you that was never acknowledged. The part that was hurting. That part didn't need you to do something big. It just needed a small whisper in awareness. "I see you. I understand. I'm here with you." The Buddha once said, "All beings suffer because they don't understand themselves." To understand, you don't need to analyze. You just need to be present with love, with truth, with no judgment. You don't need to become perfect to be healed. You just need to be honest. You don't need others to return and say they're sorry. You just need to hold your own hand and say, "I choose to stop here." Not to dig up the pain again, but to begin healing it with my presence today. Your breath. It was the first gift you received when you were born, and it's also the first tool the Buddha gave us to come home to ourselves. Just breathe mindfully, compassionately, and listen. The wound will begin to soften, not because it's gone, but because it's no longer left alone in the dark. You are the first one who needs to show up for you. You are the first one who needs to love yourself deeply enough to stop abandoning the tender part inside. And maybe, just maybe, right now, the wound you've been carrying for years is simply waiting for one thing: for you to sit down, take a breath, and say these simple words: "I'm here now. I'm not turning away anymore." 7. Your child is no longer the one who has to love you the way you want. One of the hardest lessons in life, the kind that doesn't come through books, but through the quiet ache in the heart, is the art of letting go. Not letting go like giving up. Not letting go like walking away, but letting go of the things you cannot control, so you can hold on to your own peace. And if you've ever been a parent, whether mother or father, you probably understand this feeling more deeply than words can ever express. You've given your all. From that very first spoonful of food to the first moral story you told at bedtime, from sleepless nights when they had a fever to the years you stood silently behind them, never asking for credit. You believed this love is strong enough for your child to understand, deep enough for them to feel grateful, powerful enough to keep them close, to make them pick up the phone, to make them hug you and say, "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad." But then, one day, something shifts. They grow up, and suddenly, they are no longer the person who has to love you the way you want. That moment, if you're not prepared for, it can hit like a quiet heartbreak. You might wonder, what did I do wrong? Why is my child so distant? Don't I deserve love back? Those thoughts are human. They're real. But they are also a turning point, a spiritual crossroad on this lifelong journey of parenting. The Buddha taught all suffering comes from attachment, and perhaps the most subtle attachment of all is the belief that the one you love will love you back in the exact form you expect. You see, when you haven't yet realized that your child is a soul of their own, with their own karma, their own path, their own inner weather. You may unconsciously build a frame and try to fit them inside. They must be kind. They must be grateful. They must return. They must love back in the same way you loved them. You don't say it out loud, but in your heart you wait. You hope. And when it doesn't happen, you quietly ache. But meditation teaches us to see clearly the impermanence of all things and the truth that we cannot control anyone else's mind or heart. The human mind, like a river, flows on its own. You cannot force it to turn toward you. You can only sit by the bank, awake without drowning when it flows in the other direction. You can love with all your heart, but you cannot force anyone to love you back the same way. And here's the beautiful truth. You don't need them to in order to be at peace. If you've ever practiced meditation, you'll know. Some feelings cannot be controlled. Anger, joy, sadness, fear. They come and go like weather. What do? We sit with them. We don't push them away. We don't chase them either. We just stay present, and something amazing happens. They pass on their own when we stop trying to hold on. The same is true with your child's distance. When they grow apart, when they don't call back, when they seem like strangers. If you can sit with that feeling without trying to make it different, you begin to soften. You stop seeing your child as someone who owes you love. You begin to see them as someone simply finding their own way. And you, instead of waiting for them to come home, you come home to yourself. From there, the love you offer is no longer part of some invisible contract. It becomes like sunlight, warm, steady, and free. It shines, and then it rests. It doesn't ask the tree to grow. It doesn't demand the clouds to move. And it is in that asking nothing that your love becomes the most powerful. Have you ever wondered why the Buddha, the most compassionate being, never forced anyone to follow him? Because he understood. Each person must walk their own path. And only when they are ready, truly ready, will they meet the light. Your child is no different. You may plant the seed, but the sun, the rain, the timing belong to life, belong to them. You can teach with love, but the true lesson, they will only receive it when their soul is open. And the greatest teaching doesn't come from what you say. It comes from how you love them, without conditions. You no longer need them to love you the right way, because you've finally learned to love yourself gently, fully, without waiting. And when you let go of that need, you don't become weaker. You become stronger. You don't lose. You evolve. You don't abandon your child. You return them to themselves as a free soul, just as you once longed to be free too. And one day, maybe your child will come back. If they do, you'll smile, gently. If they don't, you'll still smile, gently. Because in your heart, you'll know you loved, you gave, you showed up, and you let go, not from disappointment, but from awakening. 8. Healing cannot be rushed. There are quiet moments in life that have no name, like when your child no longer shares the way they used to, like when a warm phone call turns into a short text, and eventually into silence. You find yourself sitting in a slow afternoon, asking quietly, what are they thinking? Do they still miss me? Why don't they say anything anymore? And perhaps the most painful part isn't what they said. It's what they didn't. Just silence, long, heavy silence, enough for your mind to spin 100 stories. Are they angry with me? Do they not love me anymore? Have they forgotten everything I've done for them? But you know, sometimes silence isn't rejection. It's not a wall they're building. It's a sign that they too are carrying pieces of themselves they haven't yet figured out how to hold. You were taught how to raise your child, but no one taught you. And no one taught them how to grow alongside each other through pain. Do you remember the first time your child truly felt sorrow? Maybe it was the day they came home with red eyes after being left out at school. Maybe it was when they stayed quiet all night after a teenage argument. That was a crack in their heart that may have never fully healed, not because you didn't care, but because you thought time would take care of it. You didn't realize some pain doesn't know the way out unless it's met with compassion. Buddha once said, "There is no one in this life who hasn't been hurt. The only difference is those who awaken choose to pause and look into the wound with compassion." That's your lesson now, as a mother, as a father, to pause, to listen to silence as if it's a language, to stop trying to force healing just because you're scared or impatient, because love, when tied to expectation, can easily turn into pressure. You should talk to me. You need to be stronger. Why haven't you gotten over this yet? But what you may not see is that your child is moving through pain in the only way they know how. And it might look nothing like what you expected. Real compassion isn't waiting for them to be ready. It's opening your heart even when they're not. It's sitting beside them without pushing, without preaching, just being there. Like the earth, soft, quiet, holding space for a seed that hasn't bloomed yet. Someone once asked me, how do I know when to give advice and when to stay quiet? And I said, listen to energy, not words. If their heart is closed, be like a candle, gentle, present, warm, not overpowering, not cold, just there. Because healing can't happen in a space that feels rushed. Even the lotus flower needs mud. It needs time. It needs its own quiet place to bloom. You can't whisper to the lotus open a little faster just because you've been waiting. Your child is the same. Sometimes they don't go silent because they've stopped loving you, but because they don't know how to return, not until they've returned to themselves. Let the healing happen at their pace. Give them the right to be quiet and still be loved. Love them without controlling the speed of their recovery, because real love doesn't rescue. It shows up with faith that healing will happen when a person feels safe to be as they are. The Buddha once said, be a refuge for each other, not to carry their burdens for them, but to walk gently beside them through the dark. You don't need to pull your child out of sadness. You just need to not walk away while they're inside it. And one day, you may look back and realize that silence you feared became the open space where love finally entered. No words needed, just a look of understanding, just a presence without judgment, and your child will feel it. I'm still loved, even when I don't know how to come back yet. And you by then won't be waiting anymore. Not because you gave up, but because you finally understood love isn't waiting with worry. Love is being there with peace. 9. I gave you everything. So you should. Have you ever heard, or maybe even said something like this? I gave you everything. So you should be grateful. I sacrificed my whole life. So you should care, come home, or at least not disappoint me. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? It feels like the most natural thing a parent would say. But if you look a little deeper, really deep, you might see something else. That sentence isn't rooted in pure love. It comes from an invisible contract. Yes, you love your child. Yes, you gave everything you had. Yes, you made sacrifices that no one even knows about. All of that is true. But the moment you say, so you should, you've attached a condition to your love. You want something back. A thank you, a phone call, a visit, appreciation, something. And if that doesn't come, you feel pain. Not because you've stopped loving them, but because it feels like you were rejected, forgotten, left unpaid for a debt you never meant to write down, but somehow still kept track of in your heart. But my friend, true love doesn't come with an invoice. It doesn't carry interest. It doesn't say I gave, so now you owe. The Buddha said, attachment is the root of all suffering, and one of the most subtle forms of attachment is the expectation that often hides inside love. You give, but inside you wait. You teach, but quietly hope to be recognized. You show up, but silently wish they'll respond in a certain way. And when that doesn't happen, you feel hurt. You start thinking, I did all of this for them. How could they be so distant, so cold? But maybe, just maybe, what you call love has become tangled with a longing that's too heavy. And maybe your child, without even saying a word, can feel it too. That every gift you give carries the quiet weight of expectation. That every favor whispers, I've done my part. Now it's your turn. And slowly that love turns into a leash. It doesn't choke them, but it makes it hard to breathe. It doesn't tie their hands, but it makes them want to walk farther, just to feel free. Have you ever felt tired by someone's love because it came with the pressure to act a certain way, to repay it, to perform gratitude? Your child might feel the same. Love isn't about making someone return. It's about giving them the space to grow, even if that growth takes them far from you. Love is not something you use to remind them, I gave you everything. You may give your whole life to your child, but if that giving is tied to what they owe you, it's no longer a gift. It becomes a debt. Once during a meditation retreat, someone asked me, how do I know if I've truly let go? The answer isn't that you stop thinking about your child. It's that when you do think of them, you no longer feel a sharp pain because they didn't meet your expectations. You still love them, but you no longer need them to love you in a specific way. You still care, but you no longer need them to come back in order to feel whole. That is when you've truly let go. Not letting go of love, but letting go of the should. The Buddha never forced anyone to practice. He simply was a steady presence filled with compassion, patience, and non-judgment. And when someone was ready, they found their way to the light. You can do the same. As a parent, you can choose to be a quiet lamp, not chasing after your child, to be seen, but simply shining, so that if one day they return, they'll realize this light was always here, even when I was far away. And if they don't return, you're still at peace, because you know love is not a chain, and no one is obligated to do anything just because you love them. You love because your heart is wide enough to love. You give because you have so much within you. There's no need to hold it all alone. You let go, not because you stopped caring, but because holding on to expectations was tiring, both your hands and your spirit. That is freedom in love. And that freedom is the greatest gift you could ever offer your child and yourself. A silent blessing, the most powerful gift you'll ever give. There are some things you just can't say out loud, not because you don't want to, but because deep down you know saying them won't always make someone truly hear you. Sometimes there's a distance that even the words, "I love you, my child," can't bridge. Some relationships have drifted too far for ordinary conversations to fix. And there comes a point where your love for your child isn't shown through closeness anymore. Not through dinner, calls, long hugs, or check-in texts, but through a quiet, invisible blessing in your heart. May you be at peace wherever you are, even if you don't come back. It sounds small, doesn't it? Just a passing thought, a whisper, a breeze of a wish floating through the mind. But you know what? That right there is the most powerful, invisible gift you could ever give your child. Because it isn't spoken with your mouth. It's offered with your heart. It carries no expectations, no pressure for results, no need for acknowledgement. It's simply this: you wish them well without condition. And that is the purest form of love there is. A love that doesn't need to be seen, doesn't need to be returned, doesn't even need to be understood. And that very purity is where its power lies. The Buddha taught mind is the forerunner of all things. When the mind is clear, so too are our words and actions. When you send a silent blessing, gently, mindfully, not out of fear or anger, but from a still and quiet place within, you're sending out a sacred energy. It doesn't arrive as a message or a voicemail or a note tucked in their bag, but it arrives in a silent, sacred way, at a frequency only the heart can hear, even across distance, even in silence. You don't have to be spiritual to understand this. Just notice how sometimes you think of someone and they call, or your chest tightens and later you learn someone you love was hurting. There are connections that don't run through words. They run through the heart. When you think of your child with peace, when you wish them happiness without trying to control the outcome, when you let go but still love, step away but don't go cold. Remember, without demanding. That love becomes healing energy. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what your child needs right now. You don't have to do anything grand. Sometimes, all it takes is this. In the morning, as you hold your cup of tea, or while walking slowly through your garden, you breathe in and silently say, "My child, may you be at peace." Even if you don't come back, even if you don't understand, even if you're still angry, I still hope you live with lightness in your heart. You're not doing this to pull them back. You're doing this because your love no longer asks why. It simply blesses. And in that moment, you set yourself free. Free from the ache of being forgotten. Free from the burden of needing love to look a certain way. You no longer love your child because they're yours. You love them because they are a soul worthy of a silent prayer. In the Buddha's Metta Sutta, the loving kindness teaching, he says, "May all beings be happy. May they be safe. May they be free from suffering." He didn't say to bless only those who are kind to us. He taught us to open our hearts, even to those who have hurt us or misunderstood us. Because it's only when you can bless the absence that you are truly living in compassion. Try it. No ritual needed, no perfect moment. Just next time your heart aches because your child hasn't called or hasn't come home, close your eyes, take one deep breath, and whisper, "You don't have to do anything. I just want you to be at peace, to live true to your own heart. I'm not waiting anymore. I just pray you don't suffer." Maybe they'll never know you did this, but that's not the point, because you didn't do it to be noticed. You did it so your own heart could finally see itself clearly. You are no longer someone seeking love. You are someone creating love quietly, powerfully, endlessly. Maybe your child will return. Maybe they won't. But the love you've sent it won't be lost. It's out there now, soaking into the shared energy of this world, softening the places life has made hard, and maybe one day, when they need it most, that love will find its way back. Not in the form of an apology, not as a thank you, but as their own awakening. Because you blessed them in the right way, at the right time, without needing anything in return. 11. Healing doesn't begin with an apology. You might have believed that in order for a relationship to truly heal, the person who hurt you needs to come back and say, "I'm sorry." There has to be a conversation, a heartfelt confession, maybe even a tearful moment where they finally say, "I was wrong, and I'm grateful for you, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad." And if that moment hasn't happened yet, you might feel like you're stuck, like healing hasn't even started. But if you've been waiting a long time and the apology still hasn't come, you may begin to understand something deeper. Healing doesn't begin when someone else comes back. Healing begins when you stop replaying the story in your mind of what should have happened. She should have cared more. He should have never left me like that. They should have known how much they hurt me. These should have thoughts. They're subtle, but they loop in your head like background music you didn't ask for. And over time, they build a room inside your heart, a closed room where love can no longer breathe freely because it's tied to a version of the past that never happened. The Buddha once taught, there is no greater suffering than holding on to what has already passed and refusing to let it go. You may think you're simply remembering, but really you're reliving it. You may believe you're analyzing, but in truth, you're reopening the wound. And here's the hard part. No one else is doing this to you. You're doing it to yourself every single day. You can't control what happened back then, but you can choose to stop telling the story in a way that keeps hurting you. You don't need their apology to stop the pain. You just need one decision. I will stop repeating this story, not because I forgot, but because I'm ready to heal. Healing doesn't happen when someone else finally admits they were wrong. Healing begins when you realize that holding on to it is what's hurting you now. It's like you're holding a burning coal, waiting for the person who handed it to you to come back and apologize. But while you're waiting, it's your hand that's burning. Letting go doesn't mean you're excusing them. Letting go means you're excusing yourself from staying in the role of the victim. I once sat with someone during a meditation retreat, and she whispered to me, "I can't forgive them. They never even showed any remorse." And I gently said, "If they feel no remorse, they're still trapped in their suffering. But if you can't forgive, you're handing them the key to your heart every single day." The Buddha never said forgive because they deserve it. He said forgive because you deserve peace. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and peace is a story you haven't let go of. You don't need to forget. You just need to stop letting the past define who you are today. You don't need to pretend it never happened. You just need to stop forcing yourself to relive it in order to feel justified. Sit down. Breathe deep. Let the world quiet down for a moment. And ask yourself honestly, why do I still keep telling this story? Is it because I'm looking for justice? Or is it because I just want someone to acknowledge how deeply I've been hurt? If it's the second, then you don't need your child or your parent or your partner to come back and say it. You can be the one to acknowledge it. You can place your hand on your own heart and say, "I know you've been hurt," and you don't need anyone's apology to begin healing. Love doesn't wait for permission, and healing doesn't wait for validation. Like the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, hatred is never defeated by hatred. It is defeated by love. Blame is defeated by forgiveness. Selfishness is defeated by generosity. And sometimes, the greatest victory is choosing not to repeat the story that brings you down. You can still share your story if you need to, but tell it as the one who stood back up, not as the one still waiting on the ground. Tell it with the voice of someone who's let go, not someone waiting for others to change. And when you do that, you may find you no longer need an apology because you finally returned home to yourself. And that is where real healing begins. 12. Today's sadness is an echo of old wounds. Have you ever felt a quiet sadness when your child seems distant or indifferent, even though you're still there, still fulfilling your role as a parent? It can feel like calling out in an empty room. No one answers. No one turns around. No one really listens. But are you sure that sadness is only about the present? Sometimes what hurts isn't what your child is doing right now, but something deeper, something that happened long ago, but was never accepted, never soothed. And that old wound, even if never mentioned, finds its voice again each time something disappoints you. It pulls you out of the present and back into a memory, a place where you once felt left behind, unloved or unheard. Now, whether you're 50, 60, or 70, The heartbreaking truth is you may be reliving that past through your own child. In Buddhism, this is called emotional recall. When we haven't resolved the karmic patterns of the past, similar situations in the present become mirrors reflecting that same wound again and again. Not because life is punishing you, but because your heart has not yet learned how to live fully in the now. One of the hardest things in life is learning to tell the difference between feelings that truly belong to this moment and those that are simply echoes from a past that's still unhealed. When your child doesn't call you back, doesn't hug you, like before, doesn't need you the way they used to, the sadness rises. But if you listen closely, you might ask, am I hoping my child will fill a void left by my own childhood? When we haven't healed our past, it's easy to unconsciously use our children to patch up what we once lacked. We want them to speak kindly to soothe the childhood of being yelled at. We want them to stay close to make up for years of loneliness. We want them to understand us as if that understanding would finally heal a wound that's never been seen. But that's not unconditional love. That's spiritual karma still in motion. The Buddha once said, if the mind is still clinging, what happens today is only a shadow of yesterday. And when you live in shadows, you miss the real light of the present. Maybe your child's silence today is just a natural part of growing up. But for you, it stirs something deeper. Memories of being rejected, dismissed, or not loved the way you needed. The stronger your reaction, the deeper the pain. Not because your child is wrong, but because the wound inside you is still speaking. That wound isn't from today. It's from years ago. And if you don't see it clearly, you'll live in a loop cycling through expectations, disappointment, and frustration over and over. So the first thing to do is not to change your child, not to demand understanding, not to bring up the past, but to gently turn inward with kindness, awareness, and without judgment. Maybe you've been strong your whole life. Maybe you've carried a lot. But now, you deserve to cradle that old wound, not to blame anyone, but to understand, and finally let it go. Ask yourself, what am I really hurting about? Is this pain truly about my child, or a part of me that was never heard? And if you're honest, you may realize much of what you feel today isn't really about your child. It's just using their image to awaken a lesson that's still unfinished. A lesson in forgiveness. Not just forgiving your child, but forgiving the parents, teachers, or friends who once hurt you. Forgiving so you can sit peacefully in the present without dragging a suitcase full of old pain. I won't tell you this is easy, but the longer you avoid facing it, the more it repeats. The longer you wait for your child to change, the more disappointment builds, because true healing never starts from the outside. The Buddha said, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path, and sometimes that path takes us back to the past, not to stay there, but to finally see it clearly, let it go, and move forward. So, if today you feel ignored, take a deep breath. Don't react too quickly. Place your hand over your heart and ask what exactly is hurting. And then instead of sinking into blame or loneliness, try offering a silent prayer for yourself and for the child who hurt you. May you be at peace, and may I be too. If you can do that, you'll start to feel lighter. Not because your child has changed, but because you have begun to return to the present. And the present is the only place where real love can grow. 13. Am I living true to my heart? There's a kind of silence that lives inside many parents, but it's not the silence of peace. It's the silence of a question that was never spoken out loud. Am I living true to my heart? Have you ever asked yourself that? In all those busy years of giving and sacrificing, have you ever paused even just once to truly listen to yourself? I know you've lived a life where you hardly thought of yourself, always putting others first, always taking the last place. Every good meal you gave to your child, every peaceful night's sleep came only after you made sure your husband, your grandkids were all taken care of. You told yourself this is duty, this is love, and yes, it is love. But love without awareness can slowly become a quiet erosion, wearing you down until you forget that you even exist. Have you noticed some children grow up in the presence of silent sacrifice, yet they don't feel moved, they don't show gratitude, they don't return. Sometimes they even turn cold or distant. Why? Because children don't learn from what you say. They absorb the energy in which you live. If you live in silent resentment, if your love is wrapped in self-denial, then your child will learn to ignore the most sacred part of you, your living, breathing, free-spirited soul. It's not that your child is ungrateful. They are simply reflecting you like a mirror, and that mirror shows not only the good, but also the parts of yourself you've never dared to face. In Buddhism, there's a teaching: one who does not know how to love themselves cannot truly love others. Being a parent isn't about how much you can give. It's about whether you are living honestly with your own heart. A parent who lives in alignment with their true self, even with imperfections, can still raise a child who honors what is real. But a parent who only knows sacrifice, whose heart is filled with exhaustion, guilt, and unspoken pain, will inevitably pass on this one message: life is something to endure. But that's not the truth. Life is not meant to be endured. Buddhism doesn't teach us to abandon ourselves in order to be good. On the contrary, the Buddha taught, the mind is the source of all things. When the mind is at peace, everything is at peace. So, let me ask you, have you been living with a peaceful heart? Have you ever sat down, even once, and asked yourself, what do I truly want in this life? Where is my joy? What part of me is still waiting to be heard? Not out of selfishness, but out of honesty. Because when you live honestly with your own heart, you don't need to teach your child with words. You become the lesson. You can teach your child how to succeed, how to overcome adversity. But if you've never truly lived as yourself, there's one lesson you cannot give: how to be free inside. I'm not asking how much you've sacrificed. I'm simply asking you to look inward and ask, am I living true to my heart? Maybe you've spent your whole life trying to please your parents, fulfilling duties to your spouse, raising your children to adulthood. And you think, that's enough. But there's one thing you may not have done yet: returning to hold yourself. Don't wait until your children grow up, become distant, and forget you, to then ask in heartbreak, why don't they understand me? Because how can they if you never truly understood yourself You can start now. It doesn't have to be big. Just one quiet afternoon, one deep breath, and one gentle question. Am I still here? Am I truly living? Or just getting through each day? And if that question brings tears to your eyes, please don't turn away. That's the beginning of healing. Remember this, your children are not the center of your life. The center is your own heart. A mother or father who returns to their own peaceful heart can finally become a place of peace for others. But if you carry deep suffering inside, then even your love, though sincere, will be colored by unrest. Buddhism teaches, when the mind is pure, the world is pure. Change doesn't start from someone else. It starts from within you, and maybe when you begin to live truthfully in the simplicity and ease of the present moment, your child, like the mirror they've always been, will begin to change too. Not because you asked them to understand you, but because the energy you live with is the most powerful teaching of all. So, I ask you gently, don't wait until the end of your life to ask, am I living true to my heart? Ask it now, because maybe, just maybe, that one question will bring you home. 14. No one is to blame. It's just karma. Asking to be unraveled with awareness. Dear friend, how many times in your life have you sat there replaying the question over and over in your mind? Who's right? Who's wrong? Maybe it was after an argument, a betrayal, or a painful moment within your family. Like many of us, you might have believed that only by finding out who was wrong could you finally explain the pain, finally feel justice. But let me ask you this: has the search for right and wrong ever truly brought you peace? Through the eyes of Zen, you begin to see something different, something deeper, something truly liberating. No one is completely right. No one is completely wrong. There are only invisible threads of karma, tightly woven, waiting to be gently loosened, not by blame but by awareness. If you're hurting because a loved one turned away, because your child wounded your heart, or because your partner left you in despair, I invite you to pause, not to give up, but to look from a wider lens. Look not with judgment, but with mindfulness. Because in Buddhism, true seeing doesn't just come from the eyes, but from the heart. A heart quiet enough not to react. A heart clear enough to see that what you're facing may not just be a person, but a karmic story that began long before this lifetime. The Buddha said, "Nothing happens without a cause." This means neither you nor they are randomly cast into roles of victim and violator. Perhaps in another lifetime, you did something similar to them. Or perhaps both of you carry the same wound unhealed and unconsciously hurt each other in the same way you've both been hurt. I know this truth isn't easy to accept, especially when you've been kind, loving, and haven't done anything wrong. But my dear friend, awareness doesn't mean you tolerate continued harm. Awareness means you stop and see clearly, so you no longer stay stuck in cycles of blame, control, resentment, or silent suffering. Think of a rope tangled into a knot. The more you pull, the tighter it gets. But if you pause observe, and find the exact place of tension, you can begin to loosen it gently. Relationships are the same. Don't try to win. Don't try to prove. Observe with an open heart. Because once you stop fighting, judging, or obsessing over who's right, you'll begin to see the tiny karmic links that have kept both hearts bound. It might be the unspoken expectations you placed on them, a fear of abandonment rooted in childhood, a habit of silence when you needed to speak, leaving the other to guess, or an old pain you never dared to name. None of these are anyone's fault. They're karma shaped by unconscious memories, unhealed experiences, and emotional patterns carved into your being. And karma, dear friend, only starts to unravel when you're willing to pause and see. Not to blame yourself, not to take on the whole burden, but to understand that you are not your pain. You are the one who can see it and no longer be ruled by it. The Buddha once said in the Dhammapada, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law." So healing doesn't come from mentally dragging someone into an inner courtroom. It comes from surrender, from asking gently, "What's being repeated here? Am I still seeing this through the eyes of my past pain?" Because so often, you're not reacting to the present moment. You're reliving a memory in a new disguise. Your child might have just spoken carelessly without meaning harm, but the wound of being abandoned from your childhood rises, and suddenly it feels like the hurt is happening all over again. That's why you cry, not just for now, but for a part of you that was never held back then. So you see, healing doesn't come from finding who was wrong. It comes from having the courage to ask, "What old wound is leading me here?" And then gently returning to your breath, to presence, to awareness, no longer letting others define your worth, no longer letting past pain steal your peace, but instead becoming the one who untangles, not the one who keeps tightening the knot. If you're in a tense relationship, caught in the storm of blame, feeling wounded by someone's distance or reaction, I invite you, instead of fixing them, to pause. Untie one knot inside yourself first, and something beautiful will happen. As one karmic loop begins to loosen through awareness, the entire chain starts to soften. Not because you forgive, but because you no longer wish to repeat the same story. Not because you're weak, but because you've chosen freedom. And when you're truly free inside, you no longer need to obsess over who's right or wrong. You'll simply see what to continue and what to gently let go. Without bitterness, without blame, only clarity and compassion. And you know the most beautiful part? When one person in a relationship becomes truly mindful, the whole relationship begins to shift. Not because the other changes first, but because you've stopped transmitting pain, blame, and unmet expectations. You become a place of peace, and if they're ready, they'll meet you there. Mindfulness doesn't rewrite the past, but it does transform how you carry it into the present. And sometimes, just like sunlight slowly melting morning fog when you awaken, the suffering begins to dissolve. Thank you for listening. And if these words touch something in your heart, take a quiet moment now. Breathe deeply. Place your hand gently on your chest and whisper to yourself, I choose to release. Not with anger, but with awareness. 15. When parents stop blaming, the child will find their way back. I know there's a quiet sadness inside you, one you rarely speak of, especially when you've spent your whole life loving, raising, and sacrificing for your child, only to wake up one day and realize they've drifted away. No calls, no messages, no longer needing you like they once did. And your heart aches. What did I do wrong? After all those years of giving, why did my child turn their back on me? But dear friend, sometimes what drives a child away isn't a lack of love. It's the silent weight of our expectations. A certain look, a quiet sigh, a well-meaning reminder. Even silence can carry pressure. Have you noticed? Some parents love deeply, but they love in a way that can't let go. They love yet still blame. They give yet still expect the child to understand, to appreciate, to repay something. But here's the truth. Even quiet hopes can become a burden. A child, even a grown one, can feel that weight and not know how to stay close without feeling responsible for your happiness, your sadness, your peace. Children are incredibly sensitive to emotional energy. You don't have to say anything. They feel it. When you're disappointed, they know. When you're hurt, but pretending not to be, they sense it. When you're silently hoping they'll reach out, they feel that too. And often those emotions become too much, so they pull away. Here's something I want you to really reflect on. Your full, open-hearted presence, without blame, without expectation, without performance, is what allows a child to return freely. I understand that's not easy. As a parent, your love is instinctive, and that instinct often comes with attachment. But in the Buddha's teachings, I've learned that true love doesn't come from attachment, it comes from awareness. Awareness means you can sit with your child without needing them to change. You can see them stumble without rushing in to fix it. You can watch them fall without panicking to save them. Not because you don't care, but because you understand unconditional love doesn't rescue a soul from its path. It simply stays present when they're ready to return. The Buddha once said no one can save another, but we can illuminate the path for each other. And if a parent can quiet the blame, release the expectations, and find peace within that inner light, becomes a gentle lantern, guiding the child home. When a child senses, I am accepted just as I am, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to become who my parents wished I'd be. That's when their heart softens. And a softened heart always knows how to find its way back. Imagine a stream of water. It naturally flows back to its source when the path is open, unblocked, and still. That's what your presence can be. Not a force pushing or shaping, but a still, silent invitation. And in that space, your child might not return out of duty, but out of love. You don't have to say anything profound. You don't need to teach moral lessons. Sometimes the most healing thing is to simply be there, listening without reacting, without interrupting. Like the open sky, vast calm, always welcoming. Even to the bird that's been lost for years. And if today you were to ask me, Venerable, my child won't talk to me anymore, what should I do? I wouldn't tell you to send another message or make another call. I wouldn't suggest you apologize or explain again. I gently ask you to turn inward and ask, is there a part of me still waiting for them to fix the past? Am I still judging the present based on what hurt me yesterday? Because only when you stop judging the past can you fully embrace the present. Silent presence, free from conditions, is one of the highest forms of love a parent can offer. It's a love without words, a gaze without demand, a heart without expectation. And sometimes that's exactly what inspires a child, even after years of distance, to begin their journey home. Not out of guilt, but because they feel safe. Not because they see you as right, but because they finally see that you truly love. If something in these words touches your heart, take a moment now and breathe deeply. Love doesn't always need to be spoken. It just needs to be felt. And you are the doorway your child is looking for. I pray you'll be the one to open that door. Quietly, compassionately, and freely. And if this video speaks to your journey as a parent, as a human being, or as a soul learning to let go, please share it. And if you haven't yet, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds so we can continue walking this gentle path of awakening together. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.